Hi, friends. Today we're looking at the Proverbs lecture. The year is 2024. I'm your old pal, Papa Dale, and this is the Jan Hus Institute of Biblical Studies. It's the Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Literature degree program. Now, because there are always new viewers, I'll introduce myself. I'm a retired pastor, teacher, theologian, and professor with over 50 years of service to the Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Dale Warren, and professionally I'm known in my writing, teaching, and lectures as D.A. Warren, but my friends just call me Papa Dale. So you can call me Papa Dale too. Now you can see the details of my personal testimony, family life, education, and ministry experience on other videos on this playlist. So for now, let's get right into today's topic, which is the Proverbs lecture, part number 1, JHI Institute for Biblical Studies. It's the BA in Biblical Literature lecture, part number 1. The book of Proverbs serves as a rich source of wisdom literature that has resonated through centuries of theological and moral thought. This collection of sayings and teachings, traditionally attributed to King Solomon, provides insights into ethical behavior, moral conduct, and practical living. Proverbs is not merely a set of ancient aphorisms. It is viewed as divinely inspired scripture that offers timeless truths applicable to contemporary life. This introduction seeks to explore the theological significance of the Proverbs, emphasizing its role in fostering a deep understanding of Yahweh's character and the moral imperatives for believers. Now, in examining the literary structure and thematic elements of Proverbs, one discovers a nuanced portrayal of wisdom as both a gift from God and a pursuit that requires diligent effort. The dichotomy between wisdom and folly permeates the text, serving as a guide for ethical decision-making and righteous living. Evangelical scholars often highlight the relationship between wisdom and faith, underscoring the belief that true wisdom originates from a reverent fear of the Lord. See Proverbs 1:7. As modern readers engage with Proverbs, they are invited to discern its practical applications within their personal and communal lives, ultimately contributing to a holistic understanding of biblical wisdom that transcends time and culture. It's important to note that these are not unconditional promises in the book of Proverbs, but rather they are common principles of living that in a common way most often lead to the result mentioned. Like any literature, there must have been an author for the book of Proverbs, and we believe, the evangelical community believes, that the book of Proverbs is traditionally attributed primarily to Solomon, and he's known for his unparalleled wisdom and leadership as chronicled in the Bible. This view is supported by several pieces of evidence from the text itself and from the historical context. First, Proverbs 1:1 explicitly attributes the collection of the Proverbs to Solomon, indicating that he was, at a minimum, a primary contributor. Furthermore, Proverbs 10:1 reinforces this claim, stating the Proverbs of Solomon, "A wise son brings joy to his father, but a foolish son brings grief to his mother." Such repeated references to Solomon suggest that he is not only the main author, but he serves as a model of wisdom for subsequent generations. In addition to internal textual evidence, historical and cultural considerations support the understanding of Solomon as the author. The chronological setting of the Proverbs aligns with the period of Solomon's reign. This was a time when Israel experienced significant prosperity and intellectual flourishing. This context would have been conducive to the development and compilation of wisdom literature. Moreover, the archaeological findings and other Near Eastern libraries parallels show that wisdom literature thrived during the Solomonic era, further corroborating the claims of his authorship. Evangelical scholars emphasize that while other sages may have contributed to the collection, as noted in Proverbs 24:23, Solomon remains the figure most closely associated with this essential biblical text, exemplifying the interplay of divine inspiration and human authorship in Scripture. Now keep in mind, just like with the Psalms, there were hundreds and thousands of proverbs that have been disseminated over the years from many generations and from many cultures. And these are the ones that the Holy Spirit of God, in His wisdom, decided were inspired by the Spirit of God. And so we can be confident that these are the proverbs that God has given us for our edification. Now let's also look at the historicity of the book of Proverbs. From an evangelical perspective, the historicity of the book of Proverbs is supported by several factors which underscore its authenticity and relevance in biblical history. Here are some key points of evidence. 1. Biblical context. Proverbs is situated within the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, which also includes Job, Ecclesiastic, and the Song of Solomon, and the book of Psalms. Its thematic focus on wisdom and morality reflects the cultural and spiritual values of ancient Israel, offering insights into the societal norms and practices of the time. Point number 2, authorship traditions. Traditional views attribute the majority of the Proverbs to King Solomon. He is recognized in the Bible, 1 Kings 3, 5-14, as a figure gifted with extraordinary wisdom by God. This connection to Solomon lends credibility to the text's authority as a reflection of Israel's historical leadership. Point number 3, cultural parallels. Scholarly comparisons of Proverbs with ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature, such as Egyptian and Mesopotamian texts, highlight the shared themes of wisdom, morality, and instruction. These parallels suggest that Proverbs was a part of a broader ancient tradition that valued wise living and which helps assert its historical context. Point number 4, literary structure. The structure of the Proverbs, characterized by parallelism and pithy sayings, is consistent with other proven forms of ancient literature. This literary style not only reflects the culture of the time, but also supports its authenticity as a genuine collection of teachings and practical advice. Point number 5, the historical claims. Some proverbs reference specific historical figures or events, for example, references to rulers, judgments, and societal behaviors. And this provides a framework that can be examined for the historicity. The text presents a worldview that aligns with the historical realities of the ancient Israelites and their interactions with neighboring nations. Point number 6, archaeological support. While direct archaeological evidence specifically tying to the book of Proverbs may be limited, discoveries in Israel and the surrounding regions have confirmed the existence of a literate culture during the time of Solomon. The presence of inscriptions and wisdom sayings supports the idea that wisdom literature was valued and circulated. Point number 7, New Testament affirmation. The New Testament references the wisdom of Proverbs and acknowledges its value, reinforcing its significance within the broader biblical narrative. For example, Jesus often taught principles aligned with those found in the Proverbs, affirming its ongoing relevance. In summary, the evangelical perspective emphasizes a combination of traditional authorship, cultural context, and literary parallels and biblical affirmation, which together support the historicity of the book of Proverbs as a meaningful part of the biblical canon. And so now let's have a look at what archaeology says about the book of Proverbs. While archaeological evidence specifically pertaining to the book of Proverbs is limited, there are several related aspects that evangelical scholars often point to as supportive of its historicity. The first is discovery of ancient writings. Archaeological finds, such as the Ugaritic texts, show that wisdom literature was a prevalent genre in ancient Near Eastern cultures. These texts share thematic elements with the Proverbs, suggesting a broader context for the wisdom tradition, which enhances the understanding of Proverbs within that historical framework. Point number 2, the material culture. Excavations in ancient Israel have uncovered artifacts, inscriptions, and seals that reflect the social and political structures during the traditional time frame of Solomon's reign, about 970 to 931 BC. Pardon me. Now, these findings provide a backdrop for the kind of societal wisdom proclaimed in Proverbs, supporting the idea that such teachings were relevant and possibly practiced during this period. Point number 3, educational systems. Archaeological evidence indicates that ancient Israel had systems of education and training in wisdom similar to those found in other ancient civilizations. The existence of scribes and schools likely contributed to the preservation and transmission of wise sayings like those found in the Proverbs. Point number 4, biblical inscriptions. Various inscriptions from the ancient Near East, which reflect similar moral teachings or proverbial sayings, bolster the notion that the themes articulated in Proverbs were part of a larger, interconnected cultural ethos, prompting wisdom and ethical behavior. Point number 5, city planning and governance. The archaeological findings in cities like Jerusalem, Megiddo, and Hazor suggest that during the period attributed to Solomon, there were significant urban development centralized governance. This societal structure aligns with the themes in Proverbs, which frequently address kinship, justice, and morality in leadership. Point number 6, ubiquity in the Near East. The wisdom literature of neighboring cultures, evidenced through archaeological discoveries, further validates the presence of wisdom sayings as a common aspect of life. The themes of Proverbs often parallel these works, indicating a widespread cultural appreciation for wisdom, further suggesting its integration into daily life in ancient Israel. And point number 7, and the final point we will look at for today, is that of cults and religious practices. Archaeological excavations, reveal places of worship which have connected practices related to wisdom literature and moral living, and this provides a contextual voice reinforcing the theological undercurrents found in Proverbs. Overall, the surrounding archaeological context helps to affirm the historicity of the teachings within the Proverbs by illuminating the broader framework of ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature and culture. Non-archaeological sources can also be considered as evidence which support the historicity of the book of Proverbs. These include 1. The biblical context. The book of Proverbs is a part of the Hebrew Bible and considered to be inspired literature. It is often attributed to Solomon, who was a historical figure and who was known for his wisdom. The references to Solomon in the biblical texts, for example, 1 Kings 3, 5 through 14, 1 Kings 10, 1 through 17, lend credibility to the notion that the wisdom sayings compiled in Proverbs may originate from a historical context associated with his reign. And Jesus referenced Solomon as well. See Matthew 6, 29 through 31. And historical writings. Other ancient texts and historical writings, such as Josephus' Antiquities of the Jews, referenced Solomon and his reputation for wisdom. These writings help contextualize the biblical accounts within broader historical narratives. Now let's look at point number 3, wisdom literature from other cultures. The existence of wisdom literature in surrounding cultures, for example, Egyptian, Mesopotamian, and Ugaritic texts, demonstrates a common literary tradition of proverbial sayings sharing similar themes of morality, ethics, and guidance. It was ubiquitous in the Near Eastern cultures. This works like the instructions of Menemope and the wisdom of Syriac, which can be compared to the Proverbs, suggesting that the ideas in Proverbs were part of a wider, historically rooted wisdom tradition. Point number 4, applicability and endurance. The themes and teachings within Proverbs have proven to be timeless, demonstrating their continued relevance throughout Jewish and Christian history. The moral and ethical principles found in Proverbs have been foundational to Judeo-Christian teaching and have influenced not only religious thought but ethical philosophy more broadly. Point number 5, commentary and exegesis. Throughout history, Jewish and Christian scholars have engaged in extensive commentary on the Proverbs, further validating its importance and historical context. Figures such as Philo of Alexandria and early church fathers provided exegesis that reflects both the historical significance of these texts and their application to moral living. Point number 6, the historical impact. The influence of Proverbs on ethics, education, and governance in both Jewish and Christian communities showcases its significance throughout history. The teachings found in Proverbs have been taught in religious institutions and continue to inform ethical behavior and wisdom in modern contexts. Point number 7, the canonical status. As part of the canonical scriptures accepted by both the Jews and the Christian traditions, Proverbs is viewed as historically significant and inspired. The process of canonization reflects a collective recognition of its value, linking it to the historical experiences of the Israelite community. And in this vein, Jesus Christ, who is Emmanuel, God with us, also recognized Proverbs as not only authored by Solomon, but also recognized them as inspired sources of wisdom. These non-archaeological sources collectively support the notion that the teachings found in the book of Solomon, in the book of Proverbs, were historically rooted, contextually relevant, and recognized for their wisdom across the generations. Well, now let's look at the historical setting. The historical setting of the book of Proverbs is generally believed to be during the reign of King Solomon in the 10th century BC, although some portions may have been compiled or edited later. Now, here are key points that outline the historical context. One is the reign of Solomon. Traditionally, King Solomon is credited with the authorship of much of the Proverbs, and given his reputation for wisdom, see 1 Kings 3, 5 through 14. The cultural and political stability during his reign allowed for a flourishing of intellectual and literary activity in ancient Israel. Point number 2, wisdom literature tradition. The book of Proverbs belongs to a broader genre of wisdom literature in the ancient Near East, which includes texts from Egypt, Mesopotamia, and other cultures. This literary tradition emphasizes practical wisdom, ethics, and moral guidance, reflecting on a societal emphasis on living rightly in accordance with divine principles. Point number 3, cultural and religious context. The historical setting for the book of Proverbs includes a society deeply rooted in religious practices centered around Yahweh, who was the God and is the God of Israel, while also interacting with surrounding pagan cultures. Proverbs often contrasts the wisdom of Yahweh with the folly of idolatry, highlighting the unique covenant relationship between Yahweh and Israel. Point number 4, educational purposes. Proverbs was likely used as instructional material, especially for young people and those in positions of leadership. Verse structures and parallelism emphasize teachings meant to be memorized and applied, indicating an intent to shape the moral character of the community. Point number 5, post-Solomonic context. Although Solomon is a central figure, some scholars suggest that later collections of Proverbs, for example, Proverbs 25 through 29, were compiled during the divided monarchy after Solomon's time, particularly in the northern and southern kingdoms of Israel and Judah. This reflects ongoing concerns about wisdom, governance, and ethical living in times of political strife. Point number 6, the influence of other cultures. The cultural interchange with neighboring civilizations, such as Egypt and Mesopotamia, would have influenced the themes and style of Proverbs. However, the text maintains a distinctively Israelite perspective focused on covenantal faithfulness. Point number 7, intended audience. The audience for the Proverbs likely includes the royal court, young leaders, and the general populace. The teachings are universal and cater to the ethical development of individuals, families, and the society at large. In summary, the book of Proverbs is set within the rich cultural, political, and religious landscape of ancient Israel, primarily attributed to Solomon's reign. Its teachings reflect the integration of wisdom in daily life, moral conduct, and the pursuit of a godly life in a world influenced by various cultures. Now let's have a look at the cultural context. The context of the book of Proverbs encompasses several key aspects which provide insight into its teachings and relevance, and here are the main ones. The first is the ancient Near Eastern wisdom literature. Proverbs is part of a broader corpus of wisdom literature found in the ancient Near East. This includes texts from Ethiopian, Mesopotamian, and other cultures. These texts often focus on themes of morality, ethics, and practical living. The cultural exchange with these neighboring societies influenced the literary style and substance of Proverbs, while it maintains a distinct emphasis on the worship of Yahweh. Point number 2, emphasis on family and education. In ancient Israelite society, family was fundamental, and the passing down of wisdom from parents to children was crucial. Proverbs often reflects this familiar teaching dynamic, providing instructions on proper behavior, relationships, and responsibilities. The text is seen as a collection of practical advice intended for young people and future leaders. Point number 3, community and social responsibility. The community aspect is vital in the cultural context. Wisdom sayings emphasize justice, honesty, charity, and proper conduct within the community. Living wisely was not merely an individual concern, but tied to the well-being of the whole society. The teachings encourage behaviors that promote harmony and social integrity. Point number 4, religious and ethical framework. The cultural setting included a strong religious component, emphasizing the covenant relationship between Israel and Yahweh. Proverbs articulates a worldview where wisdom is personified and closely related to the fear of the Lord. See Proverbs 1, verse 7. This reflects the notion that true wisdom originates from a relationship with God, and it aligns with His will for human conduct. Point number 5, the role of king and leadership. Given its connection to the royal court, the book reflects the ideals of governance and leadership. Wise rulership was seen as essential for the prosperity of the nation, and many proverbs address the characteristics of wise leaders and the consequences of foolishness in positions of power. Point number 6, morality and ethics in a pluralistic society. The cultural context also involved transactions with pagan cultures and practices. These posed challenges to Israelite identity and values. Proverbs frequently addresses the dangers of associating with those who may lead one away from the fear of the Lord, emphasizing the necessity of moral discernment. As my mother used to always tell me, you become like the people you hang around with. And so, don't hang around with immoral people. Point number 7, literary features. The style of Proverbs includes parallelism, metaphor, and familiar sayings. These literary techniques were culturally resonant and made the teachings more memorable. The focus on succinct moral statements reflects a society that valued clear and impactful communication. In summary, the cultural context of the book of Proverbs is deeply rooted in the practices and beliefs of ancient Israel. It's characterized by its ties to wisdom literature, family-centered education, the importance of community relationships, a strong religious foundation, and the responsibilities of leadership. These elements work together to shape the moral and ethical teachings of the text, providing timeless wisdom for readers. Well, now let's take a look at the next principle under the topic of the book of the Proverbs, and that is purpose. The book of Proverbs is seen as a collection of wise sayings and teachings intended to provide guidance for living a life that honors Yahweh. And here are some key purposes associated with that. One is wisdom and understanding. The primary purpose of the book of Proverbs is to impart wisdom and understanding, especially to the young and inexperienced. Proverbs seeks to teach readers how to navigate life with discernment. In my early Bible school days, I learned that knowledge, while important, is not the same as wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge rightly applied. And so you should always remember that proverb. So let's move on now as we discuss the purpose for the writing of the book of Proverbs. Number 2 is moral instructions. The Proverbs offers moral and ethical guidance, emphasizing the importance of righteousness and justice. The Proverbs encourage readers to live according to God's laws. Point number 3 is practical application. The book contains practical advice on various aspects of daily life, including relationships, work, and personal conduct, helping individuals apply biblical principles to real-life situations. Could also be called common sense, I suppose. Point number 4, fear of the Lord. A foundational theme in Proverbs is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 1:7. Understanding the relationship with God is emphasized as crucial for gaining true wisdom. Point number 5 is the contrast of pathways. Proverbs often contrasts the way of the wise with the path of the foolish, encouraging the reader to choose wisdom and the ways of Yahweh over folly and the way of sin. Overall, the book of Proverbs serves as a guide for living wisely and faithfully in accordance with God's design for life. Now, over and above purposes, there are also some themes, and from the evangelical perspective, several key themes are prominent in the book of Proverbs, which contributing to its overall message of wisdom and guidance, and here are some of the central themes. We've discussed this many times already in this study of Proverbs. Number 1 is wisdom. The pursuit of wisdom is a principal theme. Proverbs often personifies wisdom as a woman calling out to be heeded. It underscores that true wisdom comes from Yahweh alone and is essential for living a fulfilling life. Point number 2, the fear of the Lord. A foundational idea in Proverbs is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Proverbs 1:7, also the beginning of wisdom. This theme emphasizes reverence for God as the starting point for acquiring true wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Point number 3, righteousness versus wickedness. Proverbs frequently contrasts the behaviors and outcomes of the righteous versus the outcomes of the wicked. Proverbs highlights the blessings of righteousness and the consequences of wickedness. Point number 4, relationships and community. The book of Proverbs offers insights into interpersonal relationships, including family, friends, and neighbors. It emphasizes the importance of honesty, integrity, and kindness in building strong, healthy relationships. Point number 5 is work and diligence. Proverbs promotes the value of hard work and diligence while warning against laziness. Proverbs encourages a strong work ethic and the benefits of planning and perseverance. Point number 6, speech and words. The power of words is a recurring theme with an emphasis on using speech wisely. This theme is also repeated quite handily in the book of James in the New Testament. Proverbs teaches about the importance of truthful, encouraging, and constructive communication. Point number 7 is discipline and instruction. The book emphasizes the importance of discipline and learning from correction. It encourages readers to embrace instruction and guidance, especially when it comes from parents and mentors. Point number 8 is wealth and generosity. Proverbs addresses attitudes towards wealth, cautioning against greed while encouraging generosity and responsible stewardship of resources. These themes collectively guide readers toward a life that honors God, promotes personal and communal well-being, and fosters a deep relationship with Him through the application of practical wisdom. Now, who are the main characters in the book of Proverbs? Well, the Proverbs predominantly presents wisdom through various personifications and characters, rather than focusing on a narrative-driven cast. Here are the main characters and concepts found in Proverbs. Wisdom personified. Wisdom is often depicted as a woman calling out to people to seek her. See Proverbs 1:20 through 33 and Proverbs chapter 8. Wisdom embodies knowledge, understanding, and the moral principles that guide a righteous life. Point number 2, the fool. Foolishness personified. The fool is a recurring character that represents those who disregard wisdom, reject correction, and engage in harmful behaviors. See Proverbs 10:21 and Proverbs 18, verse 2. Point number 3, the simple. This character represents those lacking in understanding or discernment. The simple are often vulnerable to temptations and need guidance to grow in wisdom. See Proverbs 1:4 and Proverbs 9:4. Also the wise. This character embodies the traits of righteousness and understanding, emphasizing the value of wise living and the benefits that come from it. Proverbs 13:20 and Proverbs chapter 14 all speak of wise. Also, point number 5 is the sluggard. This character symbolizes laziness and failure to take responsibility, and is often contrasting with the diligent worker. See Proverbs 6 through 11, and Proverbs 24:30 through 34. Point number 6, a mother and father. Parents frequently appear in Proverbs as figures who provide instruction and guidance, urging their children to pursue wisdom and righteousness. See Proverbs 1 verse 8 and Proverbs 6 verse 20. Point number 6, the adulteress. This character represents temptation and the dangers of illicit relationships, often cautioning against infidelity and immorality. Proverbs 5 and Proverbs chapter 27. Well, Proverbs does not revolve around a traditional plot with characters. These figures and concepts serve to illustrate its teachings on wisdom, folly, morality, and relationships. They convey the practical applications of wisdom in everyday life. Now, I'm your old pal Papa Dale, and this is the year 2024. The lecture that you just watched is the lecture on the book of Proverbs, and it's part 1 of 3 for the Jan Hus Institute of Biblical Studies. Greater insights leading to deeper relationship with Jesus await you, so keep going, keep watching the lectures, and keep reading the lecture notes. Remember to read the printed notes and look up the scriptures, especially if you're studying for the degree, the Bachelor of Arts in Biblical Literature. You can find them in the video transcript or at the link below. So, until I see you in the next video, if the Lord allows me to upload it, this is your old pal, Papa Dale, signing off and saying, I will be praying for you that you will be well and that you will be blessed.